Your soulmate is begging you to listen. The truth just came out. My beloved child. Your soulmate is begging you to listen, because the truth that finally came out was never supposed to reach you this way. Something changed around them recently. A conversation they thought would be ordinary suddenly exposed a detail they had been trying to understand for far too long. And the moment they heard it, they stopped pretending everything was fine. They realized that something they believed about you, something that influenced their silence, their hesitation, and even the distance between you, was incomplete. But here is where this becomes strange. The truth did not come directly from you. It came from someone who knew more about the situation than your soulmate expected. One sentence changed the entire conversation. Your soulmate asked them to repeat it. Then they went quiet, because suddenly several moments from the past began making sense. Don't skip, because what they discovered was not simply about what happened between you. It was about why they misunderstood you in the first place. For a long time, your soulmate believed there was something you were choosing not to tell them. They noticed the moments when you became quiet. They remembered times when you seemed emotionally distant, even when your actions showed that you cared. Without the full story, they filled those unanswered spaces with assumptions. But now they know those assumptions may have been completely wrong. The person speaking to them revealed that your silence was never as simple as it appeared. There were things happening beneath the surface, private pressures, difficult decisions, and emotions you chose to carry without turning them into someone else's burden. Your soulmate suddenly remembered one particular moment when they expected you to explain yourself, but you didn't. Back then, they interpreted that silence as indifference. Now they see it differently. And that realization has left them desperate to speak with you, because they understand that while they were waiting for an explanation, they may have been judging a chapter they had never actually read. But there is another piece they still cannot shake. After hearing the truth, your soulmate asked one question: why didn't they tell me? The answer they received changed their expression immediately. Apparently, there was a reason you kept certain feelings to yourself, and it had much more to do with protecting something meaningful than hiding something questionable. Stay till the end, because this is where their entire view of you begins to shift. They are no longer asking whether you cared. They are asking how they failed to recognize the ways you were showing it. And now they want one chance to tell you what they misunderstood before too much time passes. Yet even that is not the biggest revelation. Something huge is waiting for you, because the person who exposed the truth also revealed one final detail about your soulmate's own behavior, a detail proving they have been hiding something from you too. And when you discover what they have been afraid to admit, you may finally understand why they are begging you to listen now. What your soulmate has been hiding is finally becoming impossible for them to keep inside. The truth is, their distance was never proof that their feelings disappeared. It was almost the opposite. The more important you became to them, the more carefully they started watching every interaction, every unfinished conversation, every moment when they wanted to say something but stopped themselves. They were afraid that speaking too soon would make everything more complicated. But after hearing the truth about why you stayed quiet, that fear suddenly feels meaningless. Now they are replaying the past differently. The unanswered message. The conversation that ended too quickly. The moment they almost opened their heart and then changed the subject. those memories are returning with a completely different meaning. And one thought keeps following them: what if both of you were protecting the connection while accidentally creating the very distance neither of you wanted? Then something happened that made this even more personal. Your soulmate admitted to someone close to them that they had misunderstood you. Saying those words out loud changed something. Until that moment, they could still pretend their assumptions were justified. But once they admitted the truth, they could no longer hide behind those old explanations. They began asking questions they had avoided before. Why did your presence affect them so deeply? Why did they remember tiny details about you that should have been easy to forget? And why, whenever they imagined completely moving forward without you, did something still feel unfinished? Don't skip. Their answer was not dramatic. It was quieter, and far more meaningful. They realized they had been waiting for certainty before being honest, when honesty might have been the only way to create certainty. That realization is exactly why they are begging you to listen now. But before they reach out, there is one final truth they need to face, and this may change the entire direction of what happens next. Someone asked your soulmate a simple question. If you had one completely honest minute with them, what would you say? They tried to answer quickly, but they couldn't. Too many things came rushing forward at once. Regret. Appreciation. Questions. Feelings they had carefully renamed as something smaller because admitting their real importance felt overwhelming. Stay till the end, because their eventual answer revealed something nobody in that conversation expected. They said they would not begin by asking you to forgive them or explaining why they disappeared emotionally. They would begin by telling you about one specific moment from the past, the exact moment they realized you mattered differently from everyone else. And there is a reason that moment has remained hidden until now, because someone else was there when it happened, and that person knows a detail even your soulmate never knew. That forgotten moment is where the story begins to turn in a direction your soulmate never expected. They remember exactly where they were, what you said, and the strange silence that followed. At the time, nothing about it seemed extraordinary. You did something small, something thoughtful that you probably forgot soon afterward, but your soulmate carried it with them. What they never knew was that someone nearby noticed their reaction. This person watched your soulmate become unusually quiet after you left and saw the expression they were trying desperately to hide. Later, they even asked your soulmate why you affected them that way. Your soulmate brushed the question aside. They weren't ready to name the feeling yet. But now, after everything that has been revealed, that witness has finally told them what happened immediately after you walked away. And suddenly your soulmate understands that their feelings became visible long before they ever admitted them. Here is the detail that shook them most: that person remembered your soulmate defending you during a conversation you never heard. Someone had misunderstood one of your choices and made an unfair assumption about your intentions. Your soulmate could have remained silent. Instead, they immediately corrected the story. They explained that people were judging you without knowing everything you had been carrying. Think about that for a second. At the same time your soulmate was privately questioning where they stood with you, another part of them was already protecting the way others saw you. They didn't recognize the contradiction then. They do now. Don't skip, because this realization forced them to confront something uncomfortable. They gave you more understanding when speaking to other people than they sometimes gave you inside their own mind. And once they saw that clearly, they knew there was something they needed to make right. But the conversation did not end there. The witness revealed one more thing, something your soulmate had completely forgotten saying. After defending you, your soulmate apparently paused and admitted that losing the connection with you would affect them more than they wanted anyone to know. Hearing those words repeated back after all this time left them stunned. Stay till the end, because now they can no longer claim their feelings are recent or temporary. The evidence has been sitting inside their own past. And this is why they are begging you to listen before you decide what their silence meant. They want you to know that behind the hesitation was a person struggling to understand feelings that had already become real. Yet there is still one unanswered question. If your soulmate cared enough to defend you back then, why did they eventually pull away instead of coming closer? The truth behind that decision has finally surfaced, and it involves a conversation they never wanted you to discover. The conversation they never wanted you to discover happened at the exact moment your soulmate was preparing to become more honest with you. They had reached a point where staying silent felt harder than finally admitting what you meant to them. Then someone they trusted asked them to slow down. Not because you had done anything wrong, but because this person believed your soulmate was becoming too emotionally invested without knowing exactly how you felt. That warning planted a question in their mind: what if they had misunderstood every meaningful moment between you? Suddenly, your soulmate began examining everything. Your kindness became something they questioned. Your silence became something they feared. Even the smallest uncertainty started feeling like evidence that they should protect themselves. So they stepped back. But now the truth has exposed what happened next, and your soulmate realizes that one piece of information was missing from that conversation, the one piece that could have changed their decision completely. That missing piece was something you had said about them when they weren't there. Someone finally told your soulmate that during the same period they were questioning whether they mattered to you, you had spoken about them with unmistakable respect and warmth. You weren't making promises or trying to impress anyone. You simply revealed, without realizing how important those words would later become, that this person had affected you more deeply than you usually allowed people to see. Your soulmate had no idea. They spent all that time believing they were alone in feeling something unusual while you were quietly carrying your own side of the connection. Don't skip. Because when they heard this, they didn't immediately become excited. They became quiet. They realized how differently everything might have unfolded if either of you had known what the other was truly thinking. And then they asked the question that changed the entire mood: do they still feel that way now? Nobody could answer that for you. And strangely, that uncertainty became the final push your soulmate needed. They understood that they could spend another month analyzing signs, another year replaying memories, or they could finally tell you the truth and allow you to decide what happens next. Stay till the end, because they have already decided what they want to say first. They are not planning some perfect speech. They want to tell you exactly why they pulled away, what they misunderstood, and why discovering the truth made them realize how much unfinished emotion still exists between you. But before they do, they have one confession that feels even harder to make. Something huge is waiting for you, because while everyone believed your soulmate was moving on, they had secretly kept one reminder of you all this time. It isn't something expensive or dramatic. Yet the reason they could never let it go reveals more about their feelings than anything they have admitted so far. That small reminder has survived every attempt your soulmate made to convince themselves the story was finished. It may be an old message, a photograph, a note, or something connected to a simple memory you shared, but its value was never about the object itself. It represented a version of the connection before confusion took over. Whenever your soulmate considered letting it go, they stopped. They told themselves it meant nothing. Yet somehow, they always kept it. Now they finally understand why. It was never about refusing to move forward. It was about knowing, somewhere beneath all their doubts, that the truth between you had never been completely spoken. And after everything that has recently surfaced, that reminder feels different. It no longer represents what was lost. It represents the conversation that should have happened long ago. Don't skip, because your soulmate has made a decision about that reminder, and what they plan to do with it may become the first truly honest step between you. Instead of hiding it again, they want to use it to explain what they could never put into words. They want to tell you where they were emotionally when they kept it, why certain memories stayed with them, and why their silence should never have been mistaken for forgetting. But there is something else. While looking back at that reminder, your soulmate noticed a detail they had overlooked before. Something you said during that period now carries an entirely different meaning because of the truth they recently learned. At the time, they thought your words were casual. Now they realize you may have been giving them an opening, quietly showing them that they mattered without forcing them to respond. That possibility has unsettled them more than anything else. Stay till the end. They keep wondering how many times you tried to reach them emotionally while they were too guarded to recognize what was happening. And that question led your soulmate to do something they had avoided for a long time. They stopped asking other people what your behavior meant. They stopped searching for explanations outside the connection and admitted that only one person can tell them the truth, you. That is why they are begging you to listen now. Not because they expect a certain answer, but because they finally understand that assumptions created the distance, and another assumption cannot repair it. They want a real conversation. Clear words. No guessing. No hiding behind what somebody else believes. But just as they reached that decision, another piece of the story surfaced. Someone who had remained silent throughout everything finally admitted they knew why you became distant at one crucial moment. Your soulmate expected another misunderstanding. Instead, they heard something that completely changed the question they were preparing to ask you. Because according to this person, your distance was connected to something your soulmate themselves had done without ever realizing how deeply it affected you. The moment your soulmate heard that, every explanation they had built began to fall apart. They had always believed your distance appeared without warning, but now they were being shown the exact moment things shifted. It happened after something your soulmate said casually in front of other people. To them, it was an ordinary sentence, quickly spoken and forgotten. To you, however, it may have sounded like confirmation that you should stop revealing how much you cared. The person who witnessed that moment remembered your expression changing. You stayed composed. You didn't create a scene or demand an explanation. You simply became quieter afterward. Your soulmate never connected those two moments until now. And suddenly they are asking themselves a painful question. How many times did they interpret your silence as rejection when their own uncertainty had actually encouraged you to step back? Don't skip, because what they remembered next made this realization even stronger. Your soulmate went back through the memory carefully and finally understood why their words could have been misunderstood. They had been trying to hide their own feelings. Someone nearby had teased them about how much attention they gave you, and instead of admitting the truth, your soulmate brushed it off as though the connection meant less than it actually did. They thought they were protecting themselves from embarrassment. They never considered that those words might reach you, or that you might hear them yourself. Now everything fits differently. Your soulmate remembers you becoming more careful around them afterward. Conversations became shorter. Certain warm little moments disappeared. At the time, they assumed you were losing interest, so they protected themselves by becoming distant too. Two people reacted to the same misunderstanding from opposite sides, and neither knew what the other was thinking. Stay till the end, because your soulmate has finally realized what they wish they could change about that day. They don't want to erase the entire past. They want one chance to correct that single sentence. If they could return to that moment, they would tell the truth instead of pretending not to care. But they cannot rewrite what happened, so they have decided to do something more meaningful: explain it now. They want you to know that the words you may have heard were never an accurate reflection of what they felt. In fact, the reason they tried so hard to sound unaffected was because your presence already mattered more than they were comfortable admitting. Something huge is waiting for you, because this discovery has pushed them closer than ever to finally reaching out. Yet before they do, they uncovered one last detail about that same day. After you walked away, your soulmate apparently asked someone a question about you, a question they had completely forgotten asking. And when that person repeated the exact words back to them, your soulmate realized their feelings had revealed themselves immediately after they tried so hard to hide them. Those forgotten words were far more revealing than your soulmate expected. Moments after you walked away, they quietly asked, "Did I just make them think they don't matter to me?" That question says almost everything they were unwilling to admit at the time. They knew something had shifted. They noticed the change in your expression, even though they later convinced themselves they had imagined it. But here is the detail that matters most. Instead of immediately following you and explaining, they froze. Pride told them not to make the moment bigger. Fear told them that admitting why they cared would expose feelings they still hadn't understood themselves. So they waited, believing another opportunity would come naturally. It never did. The next conversation felt different. Then the next one did too. And slowly, one misunderstood moment became a distance neither of you had intentionally chosen. Don't skip, because your soulmate finally understands that the silence between you did not begin with a lack of feeling. It began because both of you were waiting for the other person to make the first honest move. Now your soulmate is looking at everything through that new understanding, and one memory keeps returning stronger than the others. There was a moment after the distance began when you gave them another opening. Nothing dramatic happened. You simply stayed a little longer during a conversation, asked something more personal than usual, and waited as though you were giving them space to say what had been left unsaid. Your soulmate remembers wanting to tell you everything. Instead, They gave you a safe, ordinary answer and watched the moment disappear. Back then, they thought they were avoiding awkwardness. Today, they recognize that they were avoiding vulnerability. And this realization has changed what they plan to say when they finally speak to you. They no longer want to defend every decision or explain away every mistake. They want to admit that they were scared of being wrong about your feelings, and that fear caused them to behave in ways that probably made you question theirs. Stay till the end, because one final discovery has made them realize they may not have as much emotional distance from you as they once believed. Someone recently asked your soulmate whether they would still want this conversation if they knew your answer might not be the one they hoped for. For the first time, they didn't hesitate. Yes. Because this is no longer about getting a perfect ending. It is about refusing to let another misunderstanding speak for them. They want you to hear the truth directly from their own words. You mattered then, you were never as easy to forget as they pretended, and the distance never erased the questions they carried about what might have happened if both of you had simply been honest. But something huge is waiting for you, because immediately after admitting this, your soulmate revealed that they have already started preparing the message they want you to hear. They wrote it, erased it, rewrote it, and stopped again when they reached one particular sentence. That sentence contains the confession they have avoided from the beginning, and once they finally send it, there may be no returning to the silence that existed before. The sentence they keep deleting is the simplest one in the entire message, yet it carries the most weight. I should have told you what you meant to me when I had the chance. Your soulmate can write everything around it. They can explain the misunderstanding, the hesitation, the outside opinions, and the moment they realized they had pushed you away without meaning to. But whenever they reach that confession, they stop. Because once those words are sent, there is nowhere left to hide. You will know that their silence was never emptiness. You will know that behind their careful behavior was someone trying to control feelings they were afraid to name. And perhaps most importantly, you will finally understand why they are begging you to listen now. They are not trying to recreate the past exactly as it was. They are trying to make sure the truth gets one opportunity that fear never gave it before. Don't skip, because the message contains another line that changes everything about what they actually want from you. Your soulmate is not planning to ask you for an immediate decision. In fact, they have deliberately removed every sentence that could make you feel pressured to respond a certain way. They want something much more meaningful, one honest conversation where neither of you has to interpret hints, silence, or somebody else's version of what happened. They want to hear your side, even the parts that may be difficult for them to accept. That decision surprised the person helping them work through everything. Your soulmate used to be terrified of hearing an answer they couldn't control. Now they would rather know the truth than remain comfortable inside uncertainty. And then they admitted something else. There was one question they had secretly hoped you would ask them all along: why did you pull away when we were becoming closer? They have finally prepared the real answer. It was not because you stopped mattering. It was because you started mattering enough that losing the connection suddenly felt possible. But before sending anything, your soulmate went back to the beginning one final time, and that is when they noticed something almost unbelievable in its simplicity. The first misunderstanding and the final distance were connected by the same pattern. Whenever one of you became vulnerable, the other became cautious. Whenever one moved slightly closer, the other worried they were imagining it. The connection never lacked emotion, it lacked clarity. Stay till the end, because your soulmate has decided that pattern ends with them. They have stopped rewriting the message to make themselves look unaffected. They are leaving the honest parts exactly as they are. Yet there is one sentence they still haven't added, the sentence that would reveal what they actually hope could happen after you hear the truth. Someone asked them directly, if they listen and understand everything, what do you want next? Your soulmate's answer came immediately this time. And what they said reveals that this message was never meant to be an ending at all. For the first time, your soulmate answered without hiding behind uncertainty, I want a new beginning, but I want it to be real this time. Not a return to the exact relationship you had before. Not another chapter built on hints, assumptions, and carefully hidden feelings. They want the chance to meet you again emotionally, as two people who finally understand what went wrong. That answer surprised even them. For so long, they believed their biggest wish was simply to know whether you still cared. Now they realize the deeper wish is to discover what could happen if both of you stopped letting fear translate the other person's silence. But they also understand something important. You have your own feelings, your own perspective, and your own choice. So they are not preparing demands. They are preparing honesty. Don't skip, because the next thing they decided to include in their message proves how much their thinking has changed. Your soulmate wants to apologize for one specific thing, making you question whether the connection mattered to them. They know they cannot control how you interpreted every moment, but they can finally take responsibility for the mixed signals they gave when they were afraid of being emotionally exposed. They remember acting casual when they wanted to stay longer. They remember holding back words they almost said. They remember noticing your disappointment and convincing themselves it meant something else because facing the truth required courage they did not have yet. Now they see the cost of that hesitation. And strangely, recognizing it has brought them clarity rather than regret alone. They cannot change yesterday, but they can refuse to repeat yesterday's pattern. Stay till the end, because just when your soulmate believed they had finally uncovered everything, the person who first revealed the truth contacted them again with one additional detail, something they had forgotten to mention. That detail concerned you, but not in the way your soulmate expected. Apparently, after one of those confusing moments between you, someone once asked you whether you were finished caring about the connection. Your answer was not a dramatic declaration. It was quieter. You reportedly said that sometimes people step back not because something means nothing, but because they no longer know whether they are welcome to move closer. When your soulmate heard that, they immediately connected it to their own behavior. Suddenly, your distance looked less like an ending and more like a question they never answered. Something huge is waiting for you, because this has changed the final line of the message they are preparing. They no longer want to end with an explanation. They want to end with a question, one honest question that leaves the next step entirely in your hands. But before they send it, your soulmate has decided to reveal one final truth they have never told anyone about you. And it goes back to the last time they saw you and realized, too late, that they were hoping you would turn around. That last moment has stayed with your soulmate far longer than anyone realized. They remember watching you leave while pretending their attention was somewhere else. They told themselves not to look again, not to make the moment heavier than it already felt. But they did look. And somewhere inside, they hoped you would turn around, not because it would solve everything, but because it would give them one tiny sign that the connection still mattered to you too. What they have never admitted is that they almost called your name. The words reached the edge of their voice, then disappeared. They convinced themselves there would be another chance, another conversation, another easier moment. But when you didn't turn around, they carried that unfinished second with them. Don't skip, because they now understand something they completely missed back then. You may have been waiting for exactly the same reassurance from them. That realization changed the message again. Your soulmate removed the polished explanations and replaced them with something much more vulnerable. They want to tell you that they noticed your absence after that day. They noticed the missing conversations, the familiar energy that was no longer there, and the strange emptiness left by things they once considered ordinary. It was only after losing those little moments that they understood how much meaning they had attached to them. And here is what surprised them most: they were not simply missing attention. They were missing you specifically. The way you understood certain pauses, the way ordinary conversation somehow stayed in their mind afterward, the feeling that there was always something more waiting beneath the surface. Stay till the end, because this is where your soulmate finally stopped asking whether the connection was important and started asking why they spent so much time pretending it wasn't. Then came the question they planned to place at the end of their message. It isn't, "Do you still love me?" It isn't a demand for another chance. It is something far more honest. "If we could speak without assumptions this time, would you let me tell you what really happened?" That is all they want first, the opportunity to replace silence with truth. But before sending those words, your soulmate confessed one final detail to the person beside them. They admitted that if you agree to listen, there is something they must tell you face to face, because writing it in a message would never carry its real meaning. Something huge is waiting for you, because this confession is connected to a decision they made during the time you were apart. Nobody knew that decision had anything to do with you. And when your soulmate finally explains why they made it, the entire story of their silence may take on a completely different meaning. The decision they made while you were apart was never meant to become part of this story. But now your soulmate knows they cannot explain their silence without revealing it. During that distance, they deliberately chose not to replace what they felt with another distraction. People around them encouraged them to forget the unanswered questions and simply move forward as though nothing meaningful had happened. Your soulmate tried to follow that advice, but something kept stopping them. Every time they imagined closing the door completely, they remembered how the connection ended, not with a clear goodbye, but with two people misunderstanding each other. So they made a private decision: before they ever called that chapter finished, they would eventually find out the truth directly from you. They didn't know when they would have the courage. They didn't know what your answer would be. But they knew they could no longer let assumptions write the ending. And now that promise to themselves has returned at exactly the moment everything else is being uncovered. Your soulmate finally sees why they never felt completely settled about what happened. There was no real conclusion. No honest conversation. Just distance built from unanswered questions. That is why the truth coming out has affected them so deeply. It confirmed that several things they believed about you were based on incomplete information, and suddenly the conversation they kept postponing feels necessary. Don't skip, because they have also realized something about themselves that they are ready to admit without excuses. They were waiting for you to make them feel safe enough to speak, while you may have been waiting for the same thing from them. Neither person wanted to risk being the one who cared more. And because of that, both of you may have appeared less invested than you actually were. But there is still one part your soulmate wants to tell you face to face. During the time you were apart, there was a day when they almost reached out. They had your conversation open. They had already written the first few words. Then something happened that made them stop. Not because their feelings changed, but because they saw something that convinced them you might already be happier without their presence. Stay till the end, because they now believe they misunderstood that too. The new truth has given them a completely different explanation for what they saw, and it has left them wondering whether they abandoned the perfect opportunity over another assumption. Something huge is waiting for you, because they still remember exactly what they had written before deleting that message. And when they finally reveal those unfinished words, you will understand that your soulmate came much closer to breaking the silence than anyone ever knew.